20th century. In September 1938, tensions between Nazi Germany and Czechoslovakia were threatening to drag the whole of Europe into full-scale war. In a bid to defuse the situation, the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain travelled to Munich to meet with Hitler.
Let no man say that too high a price has been paid for the peace of the world until he has searched his own soul and found himself willing to risk war and the lives of those nearest and dearest to him.
Chamberlain made a deal with Hitler. To secure peace, he acceded to German occupation of the Czech Sudetenland.
And the Prime Minister comes home to an empire filled with joy and relief, home to a welcome that he will never forget.
Arriving back at a rain-soaked British airport, he made a speech that would go down in history.
This morning, I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
These images of Neville Chamberlain waving his piece of white paper have become so iconic. But
hello everyone, another edition of the Ottawa Market. Today we're talking about the lessons of history, and there's an old saying, those who don't learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it. And and if we ignore the lessons of history, then we are going to be continue to contemplate trying to get a written agreement with arguably the wannabe authoritarian of our time, which is Trump. The lessons of history with former Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain is that he went to 1938, thought that a piece of paper was going to be sufficient to prevent World War II, was going to be sufficient to prevent, the German interest in expansionism, authoritarianism, and all sorts of talk that Trump is contemplating today in Venezuela, the contemplated annexation of Canada by economic or military force, and Greenland. We have all this thing going on right now, and now we're at the same time, in light of the lessons of history with Neville Chamberlain, we have all sorts of interests which are seeking to now rewrite CUSMA, trying to pursue written agreements with Trump. This is like completely foolhardy in my view. I've been, involved in politics for quite a long time, since actually 1988, particularly when was a part of the free trade, so-called free trade election, supporting then John Turner in opposition to then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, warned Canadians that the free trade agreement would lead to Canada becoming an economic colony, and this is exactly all that work that was part of our agreement in trying to resist free trade at that time, so-called free trade, is now coming back to us with respect to the Trump pursuit of an annexation agenda. Trying to get any kind of arrangement with Trump will only lead us further to his desire for annexation, as the Prime Minister Mark Carney has talked about. Trump is trying to get into our dairy industry, do everything he can to assimilate Canada by stealth, and this is exactly what he talked about just after his presidential election, was the forced economic annexation, and that's what he wants. So trying to get any piece of paper written by Trump is foolhardy. We as Canadians, to go back to the wisdom of elbows up, where that the Carney government now seeks to ignore, we need to be focusing on running away from Trump as fast as we can. We cannot trust any written agreement any more than Neville Chamberlain should have put any solace in the written agreement he worked out with Hitler. In the face of an authoritarian and a fascist, fascists and authoritarians do not respect, particularly if they have a fascist expansionist goal to conquer other countries, do not respect written agreements. They only have to contemplate, voice an interest in written agreements to provide a temporary time for them to rearm, to then focus on what is essentially their predatory agenda. So we cannot, if we're wise as Canadians, cannot, leave things to chance. We need to run away from this so-called F-35 deal. We need to embrace the Saab-Gripen deal. We need to build up our military capacity. The current government has contemplated 300,000 citizen soldiers. We need to focus on, the Saab-Gripen offer as creating jobs, creating a technological capacity separate from the F-35, which is under the thumb of the Trump administration, which wants to control the technology. Trump administration already said that he seeks to sell other countries substandard F-35s that will be under the control of the U.S. Air Force and its interests. We, as Canada, don't want to become annex. We need to run away from not only the F-35 deal, we need to reassert our aerospace capacity. We need to bring together and work with partners that are reflecting and complement our values. We cannot be sunken into this situation of trying to pursue written agreements with an unstable, lawless dictator, which doesn't even respect the value. I mean, how can we as Canadians contemplate an agreement with not only somebody seeking to annex us, but somebody who does not even respect law in their own society, who just doesn't respect their own Congress, doesn't want to respect their own court system? How can we as Canadians expect any better than how Trump is treating its own citizens, treating its own venerated its own venerated institutions, the U.S. Congress? Trump is just signing executive orders, not even paying attention to his own Republican Congress, just ruling as a dictator. How can we as Canadians rely on anybody like that? So we need to run away from trying to use this time before the current free trade deal runs out with the United States to run fast as possible from any possible new deal with Trump, and to focus on trying to reach bilateral agreements with as many countries as we can, to reestablish our sovereignty, to focus on free trade within Canada, to attract American know-how from people in the United States which want to work with Canadians, to people who are trying to run away from authoritarianism in the United States. We need to attract that industrial capacity that supports diversity, which Trump is against. We need to attract that into Canada. We need to do everything we can to make ourselves as independent as possible from the Trump's agenda in terms of trying to annex us. And we cannot put any faith on any piece of paper which is endorsed by Trump. He's not respecting his own CUSMA deal, which he written in his first term when he was focused on, respecting the legitimacy of law and order. Now he's focusing on, now his government is just completely increasingly lawless. We as Canadians cannot afford to be beholden to a regime which is not respecting rule of law. We need to be as independent as possible and to do whatever we can to build up our sense of sovereignty. And this is what Trump actually respects. Although he wants Canada to capitulate, this is why he's doing all kinds of these border harassment of Canadians. He thinks that, okay, let's keep harassing these Canadians and they'll just give up and want to be annexed by us. This is what he's doing. And we Canadians are not like that. We respect our society. We respect the values that we've stood up for. We want to be independent. We want to be able to be masters in our own house. We aspire to a Canada which is better than the United States. We aspire to a certain value system which Trump is increasingly ignoring, and we cannot be putting our faith in any piece of paper. And based upon Trump's respect for Putin and China's president, by us asserting our self of sovereignty, that's how we may yet still earn some respect by the Trump government. By increasing our sense of sovereignty and independence, that's the only way we're going to get Trump to respond to us in any positive way. Trying to kowtow to his utterances of wanting to extract concessions which are going to support annexation. That's not going to be good for Canada. It's not good for anybody. We need to assert ourselves to this type of regime, and that's the only way we can, hopefully in the long run, achieve some type of respect and some type of stability in any kind of arrangements with Trump. But this is certainly not going to be done by capitulation, and that's the lessons of history from former Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. We cannot repeat the Neville Chamberlain context of getting pieces of paper which are just biding time for Trump to annex us, control us, and take us over. We cannot afford that. Thanks for watching another edition of the Ottawa Market, and we look forward to your comments below. Subscribe to this channel, and anybody who subscribes to this channel and gives us a donation of at least $1, we will be, make your comment below if you made a donation of $1, if at least, and send that to e-transfer to editor@tubj.ca, editor@tubj.ca, and we will be directly responding to any comments you have about new episodes or new areas of sovereignty that you might want us to discuss, including the Saab-Gripen prospective purchase. Thanks for watching another edition of the Ottawa Market YouTube channel. Again, like and subscribe or make a donation of at least $1 to editor@tubj.ca. That's our e-transfer email. Thank you.